Imagine walking into a large room with a large crowd of people all arguing in pursuit of a single idea. As you listen, the pursuit becomes somewhat clear. But as the noise grows and the conversation intensifies, you find yourself lost and unable to gain any real clarity about a solution. Described here is the philosophical situation that Keith Barton and Linda Levstick argue many who are involved in history education reform are in. In their book, Teaching History for the Common Good, they seek to offer clarity and perhaps even a solution to the dilemma. Over the course of this video, we will explore their argument, delve into the strengths and weaknesses of it, find how it relates to our methods class and teaching experiences, and then participate in an activity that applies the principles of the book in a classroom setting. The book centers around the idea of setting a goal for history education. This goal, the authors argue, most worthy of our consideration is to prepare students to be active members of a pluralist and participatory democracy. This includes exposing them to multiple perspectives, allowing them to understand these perspectives and break down these perspectives. From there, they use mediated action theory as a framework to consider all of these ideas within. They talk about 4 stances of history, or perspectives from which students can consider history. Discuss tools of history, things we can use to understand it. Teacher application. Mediated action is a social cultural theory that tries to understand why people do what they do. It focuses on the act, what is being done, the scene, where, when it is being done, the agent, who is performing it, the agency, how it is being performed, and the purpose, why it is happening. In many ways, it sets a very good framework for them to consider all of their ideas. It allows the authors to set up an idea and then to evaluate it in very specific ways. The authors identify 4 stances or perspectives that students can take on history. The first is the identification stance. This is how students identify with the history that is being learned, whether on an individual basis or on a national basis. They argue that 2 ways can be helpful. Familial identification, or understanding how your family relates to an event, is a fleeting need, but one that nevertheless is helpful. National identification is one much more commonly utilized. National identification or national identities help set certain groups apart, whether it's a geopolitical group or simply a nation trying to find validity. The analytic stance is very much like this idea that we have of historical literacy. It teaches certain ways to understand sources, to contextualize them, and admonishes students to follow this when establishing the validity of a source. The moral resonance stance considers how a particular event or person in history resonates in the morality of the subsequent history. In this particular case, the authors state that there needs to be a multiplicity in the understanding of, in the perspectives taken in understanding morality. Single perspective morality is simply one-dimensional and is thus ignorant and unable to participate in a plural democracy. The final exhibition stance is listed as a stance that is simply understanding knowledge for the sake of understanding knowledge, and is really only considered a good thing if it is for the betterment of those around you. The tools the author gives us to understand history include narrative, inquiry, and empathy. Narrative, including narrative structure, narrative individuals, and national narrative, is seen as a broad stroke of history, painting of history. It encompasses many of the broader things, but often oversimplifies what is necessary. Narrative is interesting, and in many cases, individuals have a narrative schema that makes history difficult to teach when it is outside of that. So in many ways, history has to take the structure of narrative, despite being more critical in its understanding. Inquiry is a way of breaking down such schema and breaking down apart such narratives, because it relies on the idea that students must ask questions based on what they read, ergo evidence, and then answer those questions based on the evidence as well. Empathy in history has two specific aspects, including perspective taking and caring. Empathy allows us to walk in the shoes of those who came before us, and then develop a relationship with them in a way that wasn't previously possible. The author's discussion of all these ideas is leading towards teacher application. They admonish teachers to take this challenge, to have this goal of a classroom that is based on participation in a pluralist and participatory democracy. In many ways, they're stating that the ultimate goal of teaching should be a connection to dispositional objectives, and that all content and skill objectives should be appendages to this. For this activity, I wanted to focus greatly on the idea of perspective taking. So, I would like you to find someone to sit across from. As you sit across from them, begin describing their face. Do it in excruciating detail. Now stop after 30 seconds or so, and then allow them to do the same to you. Once again in excruciating detail. Pause again. Consider the details that each one of you are emphasizing. Now, describe your own face to them. What details do you include? What details do you leave out? That have them do the same for you. In each case, a different perspective is being considered. The perspective of an observer, the perspective of the self. When it comes to applying ideas of history, perspective is paramount. Understanding where people are coming from is necessary to having the type of disposition necessary to participate in the current world we live in. In many cases, the authors of this book make great points. They set a clear objective for what they want to try to accomplish. They create a framework for evaluation that allows them to freely explore an idea while also having a clear structure to it. And most of all, they use research in their argument greatly. No point is made without research. One difficult point of this is the idea that it is mostly theoretical. Ideas of application into a classroom are mostly passing and simply carry that structure. By making it more relatable to a teacher, it would have been more easy for me to offer more evidence of gifts or direct classroom application. However, each of the tools and each of the stances that were discussed carry with them ideas and theories that are taught in our methods class. And for that reason, I would implore anyone who is interested in creating this sort of a dynamic in their classroom to read this book. Granted, it is long and very academically written, but it does have the opportunity to help show you different ways to apply in your classroom this idea of pluralist participatory democracy being the ultimate goal. Thank you.